Nice to see so many people here and a lot of faces that I do recognise. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming and thank you for having me here. What I'd like to do, as Ken said, you've had a lot of astrophotography and imaging this year, as we have in our own society talks. So I thought I'd do something different, and I was actually preparing this for the Vic South Astro Camp that's coming up in a month or so time. And I thought I'd do that here for you tonight as well, try and encourage some more of you to get out there, forget the cameras, forget all that sort of stuff, and put your eyeball to an eyepiece and start having a look. But don't look at the things that you would normally look at, or things that you have looked at for the last 20, 30 years or so. As I said in my little short bio, I've been observing for 40 years. And on the plane as I was coming over, I was thinking to myself, how many times have I seen the Orion Nebula or 47 Tuc, the jewel box, NGC 253? And I did some quick sums. I thought, okay, each one of these, I go out observing at least once a month, and I go out on astro camps as well, where we have 3 or 4 night events. So, I'll probably look at the Orion Nebula in season at least 10 times or 12 times, something like that, and each one of those objects. So if we got, say, 30 favourite objects that you always look at, and you look at them 10 times a year, that's 300 times. Times that by 40 years that I've been doing this, and I've been looking at this handful of objects 12,000 times. You think I'd be an expert on the Orion Nebula and the jewel box. But I still go out there and look at them every single time I get the telescope out. But there is more in the sky than just those things. And that's what I want to try and get across to you tonight is, how do you go about looking at the faint fuzzies, not just the glossies that we all like to go out there and have a look at. And I was interested to hear Ken say about your Galactic Centre Star Party last weekend. It was heavily dewed. What you need to do is come out with me up to the Flinders Ranges. It's a lot drier out there. We were up there last weekend. We had a 3-night camp up there, and I didn't have to worry about dew at all, Ken. Not one little bit. I started up the telescope at just after dark, and turned it off about 2:30 in the morning almost every night. And there was never any problem with dewing. But I know what you mean about dewing. A small group of us, there was about 6 of us, went up to just north of Jamestown. That's around about 250 k's north of Adelaide, in June. Now, you haven't seen dewing until you've been there. I know what you meant about your clothes being wet. This is 7 o'clock at night, mind you. We'd only had the telescopes out for half an hour, and everything is absolutely soaked. Water is just running off the telescopes. But I had my very best view of Saturn I've ever had. It was amazing, but we only stayed out there for about an hour and a half. Couldn't hack it after that. Everything was absolutely soaked. Anyway, let's get on with this. Could we have the light down a bit? Okay, next slide. All right, so what I'd like to do tonight is talk about, well, I already have, about some of the familiar objects that we look at. Then I want to talk about some of the more obscure objects that I like to have a look at. Where do you find these objects to include in your observing plan? and then how to actually go about observing them and making the most out of what you've got, out of your telescope, out of your dark sky, and so on. Next. If you could just run through the next 4 slides relatively quickly. There's the Orion Nebula. We've all seen that. I reckon I've seen that thousands of times in my 40 years. Trifid. I looked at that last weekend. It was fantastic. Omega Centauri and NGC 253 in Sculptor. So as I said, how many of you go out regularly to a dark sky to do observing? Shame on you, the rest of you. You need to get out there. You've got a fantastic site, dark sky site to go to. We in ASA don't have anything as good as that. So we head off to the Flinders Ranges. I take 4 groups each year to do 2 different sites for a 3-night each time observing session. And I was saying to Vince earlier that I published those dates in our January bulletin, and within 24 hours of the bulletin arriving, all 4 camps are fully booked. And it's a fantastic way to get to know people. It's also a fantastic way to get to know the sky as well. So those of you that don't go out there that often, please do. And hopefully tonight I'll encourage you to do a bit of that. I've got to be careful that I don't trip over my own cable here. Okay, let's have a look at some of these other objects that perhaps you may not have seen before. 6240 in Sagittarius, called the Kama Sutra galaxy. They're 2 interacting galaxies. Normally you think Sagittarius galaxies. There's actually quite a number of them there that are quite bright. NGC 6902 is an almost face-on spiral, which is a really fantastic object. Next one. The sacred mushroom. Who's ever heard of the sacred mushroom?
Eaten it a few times.
And you've eaten them a few times? And you've seen all sorts of different stars too, I'll bet. Sacred mushroom Minara. It doesn't have an NGC listing. It's an ESO object. Believe it or not, I've seen that in an 8-inch telescope. Yeah, 8-inch telescope, which you will get to meet towards the end of the talk. Next one. Able 43 in Ophiuchus, galactic soccer ball. That central star there is a 15.9 magnitude star. I saw that on the weekend. Really worth seeing. Next one. And Jones 1 Planetary Nebula in Pegasus, talking about seeing things in the far northern sky. Of course, I have the advantage over you guys. I go up to the Flinders, and I'm probably at least 6-8 degrees further north than you are. So these things are a bit higher up in the sky for me. Again, I've seen that in an 8-inch telescope. Took a bit of doing and some filters and everything else, but I did actually get to see that. Okay, so what types of obscure objects can we go looking for? Galaxies. You've got. I love looking at the flat galaxies. They're really thin guys. You've got ring galaxies that you can look at. Interacting galaxies. Galaxy groups and clusters like the Able clusters and the Hickson compact groups of galaxies. Planetary nebulae. There's thousands of them out there. Some of them just as interesting or more interesting than your usual ring nebula in Lyra and things like that. Nova shells, expanding shells of gas from a nova. I've got a really good example for you towards the end of the talk, And one of our superheroes actually features in that one as well. Supernova remnants. There's more than one, M1, the Crab Nebula. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot more supernova remnants than just M1 that you can go chasing in your telescope. Young stars that are still enveloped in the nebulosity that they formed from. So there's lots of things for you to go out there and see. Next. Okay, you've heard of the NGC catalogue, and you'll chase them. You chase NGC 253 and so on. But have a look at some of the other catalogues that are available to you to go searching for targets that you might be able to see in your telescope. The MCG catalogue is quite common. When you start hunting for fainter than 8th magnitude galaxies, you'll see some of those MCG galaxies come up in your searches. The UGC, the Uppsala General Catalogue, is quite a familiar one as well. Catalogue of Southern Peculiar Galaxies, the Rose Catalogue, 33 quartets of galaxies. Even I have to admit that is getting fairly difficult to see. I use a 16-inch telescope, and even I have trouble seeing some of those, and so on. Next. Okay, how to search for new objects. I've got a memory stick, USB stick. I think I've left it on the computer there. No, it's in my. Is it in my pocket? Yeah, it's in my pocket. This goes everywhere with me. Doesn't matter where I am, I've always got this in my pocket. Why do I have this in my pocket? Because if I happen to see something referred to in a magazine article, in one of the news reports, on Sky and Telescope or wherever, it goes in my AAA latest files directory. And I'll just jot down a quick note, what the object is, where I found a reference to it, and then I'll go off and investigate it and find out, is it worth me having a look at through the telescope? Is it something that I can see? And so on. Some of the forums that are a really good place to get some tips on what objects to go for. You're all familiar with Ice in Space. You may not be familiar with Deep Sky Forum. Deep Sky Forum was begun in the States in about February of last year. And that is purely intended for people who do visual deep sky observing. Now, I'm talking about people that are quite familiar to you who subscribe to Deep Sky Forum. People like Sue French from Sky and Telescope, Steve Gottlieb from Sky and Telescope, Alvin Huey, Jimmy Lowry. I want to go visit the States, and I want to go visit Jimmy Lowry. He's got a 48-inch Dobsonian telescope that he observes with. And some of the things that he has a look at, I haven't got a hope in hell of seeing. Not the way that he does anyway. Space Banter Forum, spacebanter.com. Rick Johnson has a lot of pictures and a lot of information about deep sky objects. And again, I just trawl through that about once a week. Just log onto the website and see what he's been up to. He takes photos of galaxies, ARP galaxies, colliding galaxies and that sort of thing. And there'll be some that will interest me just because of the way that they're colliding, just the way that they look. So I'll write that down and I'll chase it up later. Galaxy Zoo. If you go to the Stunning Sights page, you come up with all sorts of weird and wonderful objects that you can also look at. Perhaps we might, have we got the internet available? If we could click on Deep Sky Forum. One of the beauties of Deep Sky Forum is that not only do people post their observations and suggestions for things to look at, we've also got on there an object of the week topic. And every week on a Monday morning, when I log in, I'll find that somebody has posted their object of the week to look at. Unfortunately, sometimes there's no point in me following that through when they're talking about something in Draco or Ursa Major or something like that. It's just too far north. But most of the time, there are objects that are accessible to us. If you could just scroll down a little bit more and click on objects of the week. There we go. I think that first one, object of the week, September 8, G1 and a few other clusters. That's in Andromeda. And if you come down here a bit, there's Jimmy and his 48-inch Dob. Just there. There's information about the item that he's suggesting that you have a look at, the coordinates and everything else. There's usually a picture as well, including some sketches, and then people go off and try and find what Jimmy has suggested here. And you can see here, people have already replied to him. People are using as a 28-inch f4. I dream about having a 28-inch f4 telescope. I told my wife my birthday's coming up in middle of November. I want one ready for Christmas. It came in one ear and straight out the other, unfortunately. Okay, we're not logged in, so you're not seeing the images. But these people, the members of this group are made up of very experienced observers from all over the world. People like Tony Buckley from the Astronomical Society of New South Wales is a member. I joined very soon after it started. We got members in Germany, in Holland, in Norway, in England, absolutely everywhere. And these are all experienced observers who recommend. The first thing I did when I first joined, I was looking for some filters to use with my telescope. And what better place to put a question like that than onto Deep Sky Forum. These guys spend the whole time using filters and that. So I told them what sort of telescope I had, what sort of filters I was looking for, could they make some recommendations? And as I said, I had people from all over the world telling me their experiences with different filters and what I should really be looking for. So I'll tell you what, I've learnt a heck of a lot in the last 12, 14 months or so. Perhaps if we could go back to the presentation. Excellent. And there's also the journals, the professional journals that you've got access to, that you can search. User groups like Amastro. I must say I haven't found Ice in Space as useful as I thought I would. Looking for obscure objects. It's a very popular site, and I go to it every week just to have a look and see what's going on. But I haven't really found it particularly useful on real deep sky stuff. I have a routine every morning when I get out of bed, and whilst I'm having breakfast, I fire up the computer, check my email, then I do astronomy picture of the day, see what's on there, and that sometimes has served as an excellent source objects to go looking for. I then go to Deep Sky Forum and see what people have posted. Then I go out and check the weather page as well. I'm always looking up, hoping for clear skies. And you know, you're lucky I actually came here tonight, because when I left work this afternoon to get in the car to drive to the airport to come here, I looked up and the sky was perfectly clear. I haven't seen much of that recently. Tell you what, it was tempting, instead of heading west towards the airport, to head south to home and do some viewing tonight. Right, next. And there's some really fantastic individual websites as well. And the top one, faintfuzzies.com by Alvin Huey, is a particularly a good one. Alvin Huey is a very, very experienced deep sky observer, and he has created a variety of downloadable observing guides that everybody is free to download. There are guides on observing the ARP galaxies. There are guides on observing the Able Planetary Nebulae. There are guides on the Rose catalogue of galaxies. He is a very, very prolific producer of observing guides for deep sky objects. I couldn't recommend that website more to you. Paul Alsing. How many of you have heard of Astroplanner? Just a couple. Astroplanner is a database product which contains probably 35 different catalogues that are a part of the program, and you can then plan your observing night. You can choose by constellation, by type of object you want, how deep a magnitude you want to go to, all that sort of thing, and it develops a nice spreadsheet for you that you can then print off and take away to view. It also, you can configure it so that you can, it will remind you of what sort of eyepiece perhaps you should be using on this object, based on the magnitude of the object, the surface brightness, the size, and so on. You load all your telescope and eyepiece parameters into it, and it comes back and gives you all that information. And you can take out with you to your dark site. But he's also got quite a lot of information for each constellation. He's got a little map for quite a number of objects, specific objects in each constellation, how to find them, descriptions, and all that sort of thing. Steve Gottlieb's Adventures in Deep Space. That's full of observing reports. It's full of all sorts of weird and wonderful objects that you can go and have a look at. My online friend Orion A Vogel from Germany has got some fantastic stuff in there, especially on the young stellar objects and all sorts of other exotics. Now his website is both in German and in English, so that's not a problem for most of us. However, his mate Uwe Glan, he's got a fantastic website, but I don't speak German. I can work my way through it. You know, I know when he's talking about planetaries, and I'll go through and I'll see his sketches. I particularly like the sketches that he makes of all the objects that he looks at, and so they are a great reference for me when I go out looking for a faint object, like that picture of Jones 1, that purpley looking planetary in Pegasus. You know, obviously I don't see it the way I showed it to you in that slide, but Uwe has a diagram, a sketch that he's made at the eyepiece of the brighter parts. So I know what to look for when I get out there. Very important that you've got an idea of what you're going to see. Because if you're going from photographs, obviously, as you all know, you don't get to see the same thing visually. And blackskies.org is fantastic for planetary nebulae. And on there, there is a series that Andrew James from the Astronomical Society of New South Wales did some time ago about planetary nebulae in the southern sky. I think he did 22 articles on different planetaries, and that really is worthwhile having a look at. Other than the websites, I've just listed some software there because I knew that we wouldn't be able to run those to show you. I actually use all three of these. You can never have enough. You know, they've all got the same catalogues. Why I bother with 3 different ones, I don't know, but I just can't resist it. So I've got all 3 of those. Now, Ion Telescope is a German product. And what that does is you give it a constellation, you give it the telescope, give it what eyepieces you've got, you tell it the style of object that you like to see for the constellation. You might just be interested in planetaries, or you might just be interested in galaxies or whatever. And what it does is it generates 1 page per object. It gives you all the data that you need, the size, where it is, the magnitude, the surface brightness, which is particularly important. We'll talk about that later. And it then downloads an image for you and attaches it to the page for each of the objects. Now, when I first got Ion Telescope, I thought, oh, you little beauty. I go to Centaurus. And I said, okay, I want to see every object to magnitude 15, and I want galaxies, planetary nebulae. I'm not interested in open clusters, so I want globulars and so on. It came back and it said, well, it was something like 3,000 odd objects. I thought, oops, I'm going to have to do something about this. It gives you the ability to sort on various fields, so I sorted on magnitude, and I took out all the objects where a magnitude wasn't specified. Then I took out every object that was fainter than magnitude 15. I still ended up with well over 300 objects. This is just in Centaurus alone. So I asked it to generate a file for me of all of those. I've now gone through and I've got about 30 of these for the most interesting constellations. And for our last observing session in May up in the Flinders Ranges, I gave each of the people that attended, and I usually take a group of somewhere between 15 and 21, 22 people at a time. I gave them an observing list. And if you could open up the PDF that's minimised down there, and perhaps show it full page. If you go to there, that's the one. There you go. So I gave them an observing plan for Friday, May the 10th. I had another one for Saturday and another one for Sunday. And I compiled this from the information that I got out of Eye and Telescope. So if you go to the next page on there, so there's your list of objects, just a summary, magnitude, size, and then a column for observed, so they could tick it off to when they've done it. So go down a couple of pages. There you go. that's the sort of output that you get from the software. Not only does it give you the object, and you can see there I started at object 37 from the list that I'd been given from the program. I deleted the first 36 of them because there's just so much stuff there. So that's the pencil in Vela. So it gives us the coordinates, it gives us constellation, where on some charts, Uranometria and Sky Atlas you can find it, the size. There's also notes, observing notes from Steve Gottlieb. Now Steve Gottlieb and Steve Coe in the US are two observers who have spent years looking at these objects and written notes about everything that they've seen. So the program incorporates Steve's notes into the software, and then there's a picture of the object. Perhaps we could go down another couple or something like that. If you go back up one page, that's NGC 2899 Planetary Nebula, also in Vela. That's a digital sky survey image, which means it's 15 minutes by 15 arc minutes in size. Again, up top, it tells us the magnitude, 1 by 2 minutes in size, surface brightness of 12.3. So that should be relatively easy to see. Where I think I can get a better picture, go to the next page for me. I'll then go search on the net and see if I can find a better picture than just the digital sky survey. And this is one image that I found. So that goes for 74 pages. So there's about 70 or so objects just for that night. And you can see there. Not all of them are NGC objects. If you go back to the one that was labelled, the chart that was labelled, unfortunately I've got to sit there and actually put the labels in for the galaxies, but I use Guide version 8 for that. But it is so useful to have all that information at your fingertips when you're observing. I can go to this field and I know what to expect. I know what galaxies I should be seeing. All right, if we go back to the presentation. Astroplanet, Sky Tools, as I said, there's lots of them around. Next page. Okay, so you've found a new object. I've included it in my AAA folder with the latest files on it, and it's referring to an object that I've not heard of before. What do I do? How do I find more information on it? First thing I do is go to Sinbad. This one here. The Sinbad Astronomical database is absolutely brilliant. Type in information about a name that you've got, and it'll search it, and it'll come back, and it'll give you the coordinates. It'll give you all sorts of information about the object, including a little thumbnail from the DSS, an image of it. You've also got NED, the NASA Extragalactic Database, that you can refer to. And if you're looking for a digital sky survey image or a colour image from the Sloan digital sky survey, go to nightskyatlas.com. Actually, if we could go there. All right, we won't worry about that. But what I was going to show you there with a galaxy in coma, because Coma Berenices is one of the areas that was covered by the Sloan Deep Sky Survey. You can see a vast difference in the quality of the image from the DSS and the Sloan DSS images. And whenever I can, I'll go to the Sloan survey because it produces a much better image for me. All right, next. I've left a copy of this presentation with James, so you guys don't have to write notes, and hopefully you'll be able to, if you download the presentation, you'll be able to go to these websites and check them out. Now, the most important thing, make an observing plan. You saw the trouble I go to create observing plans, to encourage the people that go out with me to actually observe properly. You know, it's so easy to get distracted. You know, you're looking at something, you're chasing this faint fuzzy, and you hear across the field somebody say, "Hey Joe, come over here, have a look at 47 Tuck again tonight." Hang on, I've seen it 12,000 bloody times already. I want to see something else. So, making an observing plan keeps you focused. It helps you to make the most out of your observing session. You know, I'll go through on any night and quite comfortably look at 60, 70 objects without any trouble at all, and spend a few minutes with each one. Give it some loving. As I said there, you wouldn't leave home without your credit card. Why leave home without an observing plan? As you saw from that plan that I just showed you, it gives you details of the objects, what filters you could use. Arrange the objects in a constellation order so that you're not going from one part of the sky to the other and wasting time moving across the sky. If you can just plan your night, the ones that are going to set first, get to those early in the night, but go through constellation by constellation. That way then your telescope doesn't have to slew as far. Your battery, if you're using a battery to power your telescope, it's going to last longer. And secondly, it gives you more time to observe instead of waiting for it to slew across the sky. And if you're making very short steps, the pointing accuracy is a heck of a lot better anyway. Next. This is one of the lists that I had last weekend that I'd created for me. So there you go, I've got them in constellation order. I've also written down what focal length eyepiece I am going to use based on the size of the object. You know, this one here has got a surface brightness of 14. You know, so you have a look at 6902 in Sagittarius, you see magnitude of 10.9 and you think, well, that's easy. I can see that in my 8-inch. But if you don't look at the surface brightness of the object, you might spend the rest of the night looking for something that you just can't see. The surface brightness is a measurement of the brightness of the object once it's been spread out, because that galaxy is 4 minutes by 5.5 minutes. That 10.9 is a point source. When you spread that 10.9 into an area of that size, it does get quite faint. Actually, I think there might be here. Made a note here. Note the surface brightness rating. This is one faint bugger. Yet NGC 6744 in Parvo, you see a picture of 6744 everywhere. Fantastic galaxy in Parvo, but you go looking for it with a small telescope, you haven't got a chance in hell of seeing it. And that also gives me a chance to put some notes in there. So this was my list, and as you can see here, there are some fainter stuff. There's a sacred mushroom. This one is actually relatively easy to see. It really is, believe me. Have a go at it. But there will be times when I'll go for an asterism, like the horseshoe in Securnus, or where is it? I had a star here. Yeah, Gliese 667 in Scorpius. I don't expect to see any planets around this star, but it's just nice to be able to go to the star, have a look at it, and say, hey, there's 5 planets that have been found around that star. That's interesting. And dark nebulae, Barnard 86, this one here. I don't know how many of you ever go looking for the dark nebulae, but Barnard 86, it's a fantastic sight. You've got this inky black portion of the sky. Right next to it on one side is a beautiful little open cluster, NGC 6520, I think from memory. 6520. And on the other side of it, this gorgeous orange star. The whole field fits quite happily inside the 32 arc-minute field of my 12mm eyepiece. If you look up here, I've got specs for the eyepieces that I'm using. So the first number is the focal length, second number is the size of the field of view in arc minutes, and the third number is the magnification that the eyepiece gives me. So again, I go out there prepared with all the information I'm going to need to be able to effectively make my observations. So, planning is the big thing. You need to plan. Next. Okay, so you've made your plans, you've driven out to a dark sky site, you've set yourself up. What are you going to do to make the most out of your observing session? Obviously, aperture is a big thing. You go out there with a 6-inch telescope, and if you've done your planning right, you'd be amazed how much you can see with a 16-inch. But whatever size telescope you've got, that aperture is never enough. You always want something bigger. I've only had my 16-inch telescope since February this year, and I'm already wanting something bigger. Dark, transparent skies can't be replaced by anything else. Dark sky is a dark sky. Get out of the city, you guys. Those of you that don't go out there regularly, get out of the city. Come to Vic South, beginning of November, and we'll show you some dark skies. Magnification. With a lot of these faint and small objects, you need magnification. I know you've all been taught, don't go overboard with your magnification. But when you're looking for faint, small objects, especially colliding galaxies where you actually want to split them so you can see both of the components, you need magnification. Don't be scared of using magnification. The highest that your telescope and the conditions will allow, go for it. As I said, steady skies, better seeing, ability to resolve close companions or detail. Who's heard of the wiggle test? Yeah, I've got 1, I've got 2, 3. Great. Do you know what the wiggle test is? You don't do this when you're observing. You actually get the telescope to do that for you. As you're looking through the eyepiece, just tap the telescope so that it slightly vibrates. If there's something really faint in the eyepiece that you haven't been able to see before, that slight movement will actually accentuate that, and you'll see it. I used that on the weekend on a number of those objects, and I was able to see them. I actually looked at a planetary in Aquila called Able 70. Able 70 is the planetary with a hat. There's a beautiful donut-shaped planetary, but then right in the same line of sight, just above it, is an edge-on galaxy. So it's a planetary with a hat. I was having trouble even seeing the galaxy, even seeing the planetary, and I hadn't even tried it, seeing the galaxy yet. But I tapped it, and there it was. So then I put one of my filters on, and that brought it up a little bit better. I could see it better. I still couldn't see the galaxy, and then I went to a bigger telescope that one of the other guys had, and we could see both there. So the wiggle test is quite important. Dark adaptation, very, very important. See if I can move far enough over here. Yeah, here we go. I should have taken it out before. When my wife first saw this, she thought I'd converted into a monk. I know it's here. Yes, here we go. I can feel it. That's tomorrow's shirt there. You might think it looks funny, but tell you what, it helps enormously. Put that over your head, button it up, and then when you're observing at the eyepiece, you can cover the eyepiece with this, and it removes all stray light and improves viewing incredibly. Now, I bought this ready-made from the chap that actually created Deep Sky Forum. He has a site called Dark Skies Apparel, and he sells things like this, an observing vest with lots of pockets, so you can put eyepieces and all sorts of things in it. But I just wanted the hoodie, and when I bought it, then other people saw it, and now quite a number of our members have actually got have got these hoodies, and that helps. It's amazing how much it does actually help. But a dark adaptation is something that you've got to do. Also, if your eyepiece has an eye guard on it, don't push it down. Leave it up, and then just rest your eye on the guard. And again, that helps to keep stray light out, because you're chasing really faint fuzzies. You need every little bit of help that you can get. I was reading something the other week. When you're observing and you're looking for something really faint, and you might even just be on a slight tippy toe because the object is straight up and the eyepiece is just almost out of reach, and you're observing, and you don't want to get your moisture from your breathing onto the eyepiece. So what do? You hold your breath, don't you? You stand up there, you're observing, and you stop breathing, and you're looking. What happens when your eye and your blood gets deprived of oxygen? Your sensitivity disappears. So don't stop breathing. Have a few really good deep breaths first, and then look. It helps. It really does. Right, next. Filter slider, really important. How many of you have dropped a filter as you're trying to screw an O3 filter or something into the back of an eyepiece in the dark? Yeah, I'm sure we've all done it. I've done it too. So for this new telescope that I recently got, I bought myself a filter slider that sits inside the tube, just before the focuser, and I can just reach in and move it up and down to the filter that I want. Makes a huge difference. You're not pulling an eyepiece out, you're not finding a filter, you're not screwing it on. It saves so much time and so much safer. There's a really good description on filters on Ice in Space, written by John Banbury. I don't have the time, just been shown the clock, I don't have the time to run through some of the things that he talks about on that article, which were part of the next couple of slides. So we'll go past those, but have a look at, download the PDF at that URL. It really is interesting. I think it should be mandatory reading for you before you go to bed tonight, all of you. Okay, so I had some information about the filters. We'll skip that. Perhaps we'll stick to this though. The filters, they do nothing to increase the flow of photons to your eye. or increase the brightness of any features of the target that you're looking at. All filters are doing is improving the signal to noise ratio to improve the contrast. And that's what you want. Next. Okay. As the caption up there says, size does matter. Now, for a long time, the telescope that I used to go out observing out bush was this little guy here, an 8-inch Meade LX90. I've had that for about 12, 13 years now, that's travelled all over Central Australia. It's been across the Simpson Desert, the Strzelecki track, the Birdsville track, been everywhere. And it's been a fantastic telescope, and you wouldn't believe the things I have seen with that telescope, with the appropriate care. It's certainly dwarfed by these two 18-inch telescopes here. It's incredible how much I saw that, and I still have that telescope. I'll never get rid of it. Next. That's my current scope, my 16-inch f4.5 Go2 Dobsonian. It's got a Argo Navis controller with a ServoCat Go2 system on it. The chap looking through it, collimating it, is Alan Brinkworth. He's the chap that made the telescope for me. And he was featured in the previous slide with his 18-inch telescope. This picture was actually taken not far from here. Relatively not far from here, at Samba Park, at the base of Mount Buller. In February, we spent a week there observing, trying to get away from the heat of Adelaide, and that was quite successful. Now, observing nova shells. You can see the expanding shell there. And I better move this away from me before I trip over it. In Hercules. And this has been expanding since 1934. It was one of my targets last weekend, and I did actually get to see the shell. But just shows you what a little bit of research can do. And this was really interesting, because when I went to search for, I put that argument into Google exactly like that, and the first entry that came up was an entry from Wikipedia. And there wasn't much, just a brief description of the nova back in 1934 and where it was and that. And I just happened to scroll down to the references and came across a reference that took me to that website there, space.com. And believe it or not, it led to the story of Superman. In that when Jerry Siegel was creating his comic book hero back in the 1930s, the original story of Superman was that he was a time traveller, had come from Earth's future into our present time. And at that time he was still developing the story, and he was trying to get somebody to publish it and that sort of thing. And Jerry Siegel was an amateur astronomer, and he was president for some time of a local astronomy club as well. And then when Nova Hercules 1934 appeared in the sky, he changed the story, and Superman became a visitor from another planet, the planet Krypton, that had been destroyed in an explosion. So isn't that interesting? So the sort of things that you find out. Next. As a visual observer, I never have to worry about that sort of thing. Cables absolutely everywhere. And one thing I don't have to ever worry about, I don't trip over any cables in the dark at all. Thank you, everybody. I know I've gone a little bit over time, Ken. Sorry about that. Any questions?